Hi guys, welcome back. So unless you're living under a rock, you've probably heard of ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a chatbot model designed by OpenAI that is based on the GPT, which is Generative Pre-trained Transformer language model. It is designed to generate human-like responses to text input in a conversational context. ChatGPT uses a combination of machine learning and natural language processing techniques to generate appropriate responses to user input in a way that resembles human conversation. In this video, I wanted to see how we can use OpenAI's API to incorporate ChatGPT into a React Native application to create a chatbot and a text translation app. So enough talk, let's get to the code. All right, so like always, the first thing you want to do is to create your folder. I like creating my folder in the documents, documents folder. Let's call it, let's translate. All right, looks good. Now you're gonna open up your Visual Studio Code. If this is your first time, you might want to follow the link in the description to download Visual Studio. So you open the folder, go to the folder that you just created, which in our case is this one. All right, so we have our folder open here. That's cool. Then what you want to do now is go to your terminal, open up a new terminal. Okay, run the following command: npx create next app at latest. All right, so you just wait for it to ask you some questions. This is what is your project named? We'll call it let's translate. Next, TypeScript, yes. Source directory, actually, you know what, let's say no. We're going to create these folders by ourselves later. And so now it's going to be installing these dependencies one after the other. We just have to be a little bit patient. Okay, so I'm just going to pause this part for now. All right guys, so it looks like our Nextjs app is done creating. Yeah, so this is cool. Now we're going to start the saver. So obviously, first of all, we need to cd into the folder that we just created. So like you see, it created a new folder inside the folder that we had initially. So we're going to cd into that. Let's translate. Okay, and let's run npm run dev. We'll just wait for it to finish creating a server. All right, so it looks like our server has started on port 3000. So if you're using Windows, you can just hold your control key, click on this URL. It's obviously going to pop up your browser, your default browser. Then you just want to wait for it to load the default Nextjs page. So like you can see, we have it loading here. This is awesome. So let's get going. Now we need to create two API endpoints. So we'll not touch anything in the pages directory, and we'll only touch this API folder. And that's because by default, Nextjs treats any file in the API folder as an API endpoint, and that is why we're only going to be dealing with this. I mean, so if you're going to be working on the front end and all of that, you want to work on these other files, but since we're only creating API endpoints, so we're going to be dealing with the API folder. So the next thing you want to do now is to create the first file. We'll call it ask a question dot ts, right? Once that is done, we're just going to first of all now install OpenAI. So how are we going to do that? Let's pull up a new terminal here. We're gonna have two terminals running, so don't forget to cd into the folder that just got created, and then we'll run npm I OpenAI. We'll just wait for it to install. All right, guys, so it looks like OpenAI is done installing. That's cool. Now let's go back to the folder, to the file that we just created, which is ask a question.ts, and we're going to write the following code. So let's say import type, just a moment, import type, let's say next API request, and then next API response. Okay, looks good. Next line, import configuration, and let's say comma OpenAI API. Looks good. We could actually okay, we'll get back to that in a moment. Say const configuration, just make sure that it's not a capital C here. You want to keep it as a small letter C. New configuration, and we'll do that. Let's say API key here also. Just make sure you're using a capital K, because that might give you a problem later. OpenAI underscore API underscore key. Okay, let's put a comma there and then close it. All right, let's say const OpenAI, and we go to new OpenAI API, then in brackets we say configuration. All right, close that, export default async function. All right, so here actually we need this to be handler. Let's just fix this here, and then we shall have some code in here. Let's request next API request, and just put a comma there, response next API response. Okay, cool. So now in between these guys, we're gonna say const prompt prompt. You can call it whatever you want to call it. You can call it question or whatever you want to call it. Query dot prompt. Okay, let's do that. Let's do an if statement here to check if we don't have a prompt, then what should happen. If we actually don't have a prompt, then what we want to do is to return a 400 error, which symbolizes that there's been no input. So we'll say 400 there dot JSON. We'll do that, and then we'll do that. Okay, there's been an error. Okay, do that in both brackets. Let's say prompt missing. Okay, let's close it there. Actually, we need to get out of the if statement and do another if statement to check the length of the prompt, so that we try and limit the length of the prompt, so that we actually get to protect our OpenAI tokens, right? So let's do return here, rest.status, and then we'll also use a 400 error code here, the same as the error code that we used on the error message. So here we'll also say prompt too long. Actually, this has to be inside brackets like that. Now you need to close that. Now let's do a completion here. Completion is equal to await OpenAI dot create completion. Do that. Let's say model. It actually depends with which model you want to give it, but we're going to use the fastest model, which is DaVinci. But you can go to the OpenAI documentation and you're going to be able to find the different models that you can use. So here we're going to say something like let's say answer the following question like a doctor, something like that, right? So let's break the line. Topic is going to be our prompt, right? So let's say prompt there, and we can break the line again there. Okay. Yeah. And now you want to name your tokens. Yeah. So max tokens, it's going to be 500. You know what? Let's give it 200. 500 is a little bit too much. We'll get the temperature. Let's keep the temperature at maybe 0.8. And yeah, don't forget your comma. Presence penalty, we'll keep it at 0. And then we've got frequency penalty. We'll keep it at 0 as well. Okay, I'll close that. Now we're going to create a const for our answer, and we'll say completion dot actually it should be data dot choices, then we use that dot text. Looks good. Let's get a response here. Status 200 means the response was given, so we used 200. If you remember, we used 400 for the error. Actually, we won't call it code. We'll say answer here. Okay, don't forget to close that. Now we have one thing that we haven't done here. We need to create a .env file to be able to retrieve this OpenAI key. So right here in your root folder, let's go ahead and create a file, call it .env, and then just going to give it this exact same name. There you go. And then we're going to now go to OpenAI to collect our API key. So this is platform.openai.com. Just go to your profile there, go to view API keys, and then you can create a new secret key. Just copy that, and then get back to your Visual Studio Code, paste that there, save, get back here, and with that you should be good. You should be good to go. Yeah, you should be good with that to go. You save. Just make sure that your server is still running. Okay, so our server is still running. You need to download Postman. I've left the link in the description for you to download Postman. The setup is pretty straightforward, but yeah, you can pretty much Google how to set up that quickly. All right, so once you open up Postman, you want to get your local hosts. Oops. Okay, get your local host. You can open that, and you can say API backspace. Let's say Ask A. And remember, anything that is under the API folder is treated as an API endpoint, and that is why we're just calling the file directly, because that's how Nextjs treats these files. So we say ask a question, and then we are going to put the question symbol, and then we'll say prompt is equal to, what is the question? Let's say, what is Vercel, right? And we'll put a question mark there, and we'll send that. Wait for response. And there you go. There you go. You have your answer. Vercel is a cloud platform for static sites and serverless functions designed to make web development easier and more accessible to everyone. It provides a complete workflow for front-end developers, from local development to global development. All right, guys, there we go. We've created our first endpoint. Congratulations. Now we're going to create our second endpoint, which is going to be the translate endpoint. You want to get back to your API folder, and you create a new file, and we'll call it translate. All right, so we're going to use all right, looks like, all right, beg your pardon, let's rename that to translate.txt. Nextjs, then it will be recognized as an API endpoint. Now we're going to use pretty much the same code, so I'm just going to copy this code and paste it in the translate. What we're going to play around with is the prompt, and then we'll also create a new constant here. So we say const, open your curly bracket there, query, and just create new two variables there. This one we're going to be translating from English. Once it's done, let's go say request dot body. Right, looks good. We can close it there. Oops, so we forgot to put our queue there. Right, that looks good. And now we're just going to be playing around with the prompt. So here we're going to say something like translate, put your $, just to make reference, so that it's not picking it as a string, so that we make reference to the const query that we just created. We'll say query. Okay. Don't mind the ands, that's just a trick. All right. But so we say language there. All right. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Actually, we're going to use a word like bonjour here, just to see how this API endpoint is going to work. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's save this file and get back to Postman, and we're going to change this API endpoint here. We'll call it translate, and then the prompt is going to be something like bonjour. Okay, just send that. Let's wait to see if we're going to get a response. There you go. The answer is hello. So bonjour translated as hello. Looks good. All right, we're making progress. Now, once your API endpoints are done, the next thing is we're going to be deploying our API endpoints to Vercel, and then we shall be creating our React Native app, and then connecting our app to these two API endpoints. Then we'll be using that to translate text which is coming from OpenAI, or to actually get to chat with ChatGPT. So we'll create two variations inside the app. The other side will be a chatbot, and the other side will be a translation app. We'll be using OpenAI. So all right, guys, let's get on to the next thing, which is deploying our API endpoint to Vercel. Right, guys, so to deploy your API endpoints to Vercel, I like to use GitHub desktop. Makes the work a lot easier for me. So if you don't have that, just create a new repository, and then you want to commit so say update translate.ts, copy the same, put it in the description. Let's commit that change and then push it. All right, once that's done, you guys can let me know if you'd like a separate tutorial on how to set up your GitHub desktop. So now when you open your the repository that you just committed, you're gonna notice that it's been pushed. Oh, one more thing, when you're pushing on a public, when it's open to the public, OpenAI is going to automatically dictate that your API key has been leaked, and then as a result they'll send you an email which is then going to say your API key has been rotated, and then it's going to change. So basically this API key is going to stop working almost immediately. Anyway, we're going to work on that. Next thing you want to do now is go to Vercel, search for Vercel, and then you can log in. Right, so I already, right, just gonna wait for that to load up. Yep, right, looks like we're good now. So you can go to your login page. I'm just gonna log in with my GitHub. Do its thing. Obviously it's because this is not my first time, and that is why I just went straight. Okay, so you can go to add new, import a repository. I'll import my latest repository, we'll call it that, root, leave everything the way it is. Yeah, so this is where we're going to put our OpenAI API key. So basically we're just gonna copy it from here. Okay, just paste it there, and oops, beg your pardon, copy that. So you can keep that on. All right, yeah, actually add that. Okay, and then yeah, I guess that looks good. Let's go ahead and deploy. We'll just wait for it to build. It's building right now, installing dependencies. Right, building. Right, looks like the build is complete. Just wait for it to do its thing. It's completing the right. Looks like we're good. Now we can go to our dashboard. If you click on that, you should be able to see our URL there. So once you open up this URL, you should see about the same page that we had earlier when we had it running on port 3000. Now if we get this same URL, just go to Postman, and we just replace this with that and try to get a request. We should be able to get a response there. Right, obviously if it doesn't give you a response, then the challenge should be with OpenAI's API key, which just changed. So we're going to attempt to change that. So ask a question. Let's see first of all before we get to that. Okay, so looks like we're not getting any error. The challenge here, AI's API. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a new one. We'll copy this. Let's get back to Vercel, and we're just gonna attempt to edit our settings. Okay, environment variables, and we have our OpenAI key here. Let's go ahead and edit that. Let's put that there, save that, and I guess that should be good. Let's try to send another request there. Looks like we're still not getting our response. Not exactly sure why that is, but let's get back to let's try to run this again. So as you can see, it says it's ready. We are just going to restart our Vercel project that is running already. Let's say redeploy with existing build catcher. Yeah, okay, so we're just gonna wait for it to build. You can see the status there. All right, guys, so looks like we were able to figure out where the challenge was. Just make sure that that you input the correct and updated OpenAI key on Vercel and not the one which is on your GitHub or in your local environment, because OpenAI is going to detect that and you will not be able to run any API endpoints. So after we made the change, if you go back to Postman, we're going to try to run another prompt here. Let's say what is Postman? Okay, send that. Let's see the response. See the response that we get. So Postman software developer, development tool, so and all of that. So yeah, so this works. This means that we have successfully deployed our API endpoint to Vercel. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is to create our React Native app, which we are going to connect to our API endpoint, which we have just deployed. And that is going to be the next step now. All right, guys. So to create our React Native app, what we're going to do is to get back to our folder. Let's translate here. We'll create another folder inside this folder and call it React Native. Okay, that's cool. And then we're just going to close that. So now we're just going to open that folder that we just created, which is inside here. We'll open React Native folder. All right. Okay, cool. And open a new terminal. So I'm gonna close that. All right, cool. So once you're in that folder, you're gonna run npx react native init, and then we are going to call it, let's say, React Native let's no, I think let's call it React Native Translate, right? Yeah, it's cool. Dash dash template React native template types script. All right, looks good. Oops, we need to, all right, let's say npx react, I beg your pardon, why we seem to be, so we actually need to remove these guys here. Hit enter, and it should start building a new React app. I'm just gonna wait for that process to run. Yeah, so proceed. Yes. Right, we're just gonna wait for that. Oops, looks like we got an error. You know what? Let's just take a look at this. Oops, okay. We had two S letters here. So that was the error we made. All right, let's run that again. All right, looks like our React Native app is done building. All right, this looks cool. So we just need to cd into the folder that we just created right now. So that's rn translate. That's good. And then we're going to run the following command: npx react native run Android. You want to make sure that your emulator is running, or in my case, I'm going to connect an actual device, and then I'm going to run this React app on an actual device. Right. I'm just going to project that onto the screen. So after doing a little digging and a little patience, a lot of patience really, when you run this command, I was getting an error about ADB, and so this is the error. Okay, no, not this one, but this one. Yeah, so it says ADB not recognized as an internal or external command. So after doing a little digging about this, I was able to find a solution for this. So basically what you have to do is to, okay, yeah, so chances are high you might be getting this error, which says failed to start up, command failed, ADB shell start, and all of that. So how I was able to get around this was by, you go to your C drive, go to users, go to your user, and go to app, and then go to local, then look for go to Android SDK, then platform tools. Then this is the path that you need to add to your environment variables. So just copy that and just type variables. You should be able to see it pop up. Then go to your environment variables. Under system variables, look for path, which is right here. Go to edit, click on new, then you can add your path there. I've already added mine, so you just need to add yours there. And guys, that should be good. Now even after doing that, I still encountered the same challenge. So I thought of directly using the PowerShell. So when you run PowerShell, okay, yeah, so when you run PowerShell directly from here, you just want to cd into documents. So for you might be cding into the location. So this is basically the location that I'm following right now. Documents. I'm basically just following this location. So cd React Native cd rn translate, and then we're just going to run this command. So you just want to copy that, get back to your PowerShell, and run pretty much the same command. Just wait to see what will happen. Right, so after it's done building, when you've used the PowerShell, you should see your app up here loaded. All right, I guess we're good there. So yeah, now before we start to write code, we're going to edit the app.tsx file, and then we're going to write some code there. Obviously this is coming from that file. So you get back to your to your Visual Studio. Let's open the app.tx file. So we might want to remove a couple of things here. From here, we might want to just get rid of everything. We're going to put in some new code here actually. So let's say import view text style sheet, image pressable text input. Right, so let's say from React Native. Okay, don't worry about that for now. We are going to fix it. Just ensure you have your comma there. In our next line, we are going to say const app react.fc, which will be equal to that, and then we'll open that say view style. So we're going to create some style here. Style container. Just close it up there. Okay. Let's have some text. And we're going to say hello React app, something like that. yeah. So with that, you should be able to see hello React app on the screen in the middle. Yeah, so that's cool. All right, so we're gonna be I've already put code here, but I'm going to run you through the different folders and the files that have been created, and the different code that I've put in here. So there's something I forgot to mention to you guys. So you need to install Axios. Axios is what is going to enable you to be able to do post requests or get requests from the API that we just created. So if you don't do this, you might run into a few errors. All right, you just need to run npm install in your root directory. So if you have a terminal open there, just make sure you're in the correct directory. cdrn translate. This is where you're going to run this command. So I've actually already run it, so I'm not going to run it again, but this is the command you need to run. Okay, so once that's done, I created an assets folder where I put my icons and some animated typing stuff, and yeah, some loading. Don't worry about that. And then this index.ts file here. And then under the source folder, you're going to need to have two folders: components and then services. So first deal with the components folder. Under components, we're going to have conversation. And remember, now we said the app is going to have two sides. One side is going to be for the conversation, and then the other side for the translation. And that's why we are having two folders in the components folder here. So if you open the conversation folder, you're going to find styles. So this is the design of the conversation that we're going to have, and then this is just basically where we're going to be linking the different components. So this get answer method is coming from the API file, which I'm in a moment going to be explaining to you, and then it displays that on the user interface and all of that. So it's about conversation, pretty much the same nature of files. Now when we get to the services folder, you want to, so if you notice, we said you need to have components and then services. So under services, you create another folder, you call it API. Under API, we're going to have this folder. So this is where the magic is going to be happening. At the very top here, we're creating a constant, and we're calling it base URL, and this URL is the endpoint that we created and deployed to Vercel earlier, if you remember. And then we're just going to say /API / if you remember what we were doing in Postman. And then we have a get answer here, which is what we're making reference to our conversation component, if you remember, which is this one here. So this is linking to that to be able to get the answer from the API and then display it on the conversation user interface. Okay. So we are creating a response constant again here. As you can see, we're using Axios to be able to send a post request to our API, and then we are pulling the base URL, which is the base URL here, So if you remember, let's just open Postman. I just want to give a little context to this. So if you remember, here we were having backslash API, and would have ask a question, then we have prompt, and then what the prompt is going to be the question. And that's exactly what we're doing here. So we're basically getting this whole thing, backslash API, and then backslash ask a question, then we have a prompt, and then what the question is going to be. And then here you want to pay attention to this. So I'm calling answer, and if you remember in our back end files, what we did is you know what, let me just see so this is the backend project that we had done earlier. So if you remember, so we are basically calling this constant here. You want to make sure that the name is exactly the same as what you're going to oops, oh, I think all right, yeah. So basically what I'm saying is, if you notice here, you want to make sure that what you're pulling here is the exact same thing as what is in your backend. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to pull any data from the API. All right, so we're checking if the status is 200, meaning that we are getting a response, and then you can print that onto the screen. Same thing for the translate here. We were using answer as well, if you notice. Let's go back to the translate to TS. You can see that we're using answer for the response here as well. So this is what we're getting, and then we are playing around with that. So that's what we have here. And the prompt, we're getting the query and the language there. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Now to run it, I've been using the PowerShell, and that's what we're going to use still now. Just open up your PowerShell, go into that directory, and then run the following command: npx react native run 100. Once that's running, then I'm going to open up my real device here. So just type A to run on Android, and it will start firing up. Just be a little patient. Installing now, about to run. Okay, so about to start. Okay, there we go, and the app is running. Okay, just wait for it to finish the bundling. Once that's done, you should be able to see your app pop up. Just give it a moment again. Okay. Right. So let's try to write something here. Send a prompt like that. Okay, it's a little bit weird. So hi. let's try the translate. Right, translate works. Let's try something else. Maybe hola. Right, that works. Let's check the chat now. Try something like hi. There we go. It works. Yeah, so it's funny. If you notice, it's quite straight up, and it's only responding like a doctor, and that's because in our backend, if you remember, we had said answer the following question like a doctor. So you might need to change that. Otherwise, you're going to be getting some medical help from ChatGPT. All right, guys. I just thought I should mention that. It was quite intriguing why it was only responding like a doctor, until I remembered that that's what we gave it. All right, guys. I hope you learned something in this tutorial. Please like, share, and subscribe, and look out for more videos. If you have any challenges, just put it in the comments section. I'll be able to respond, or reach out to me on Instagram at TechJoe, or Facebook, my Facebook page, TechJoe. Or actually, I think there's one of my emails in the description. But until next time, it's peace from me.